Verse 25, whom God put forward, that is Christ, God put forward as a propitiation by his blood to be received by faith. Now the word propitiation here, the word propitiation is used in different parts of the Bible, 1 John and so forth, and in our English Bibles, but the word in Greek is only used twice. It's used here and it's used in Hebrews, and it's the word mercy seat. And if you recall, it's a reference back to the Old Covenant that once a year on the Day of Atonement, the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies, this kind of 15-foot by 15-foot by 15-foot box, and he would go in there, and there was the Ark of the Covenant. And the top of the Ark of the Covenant was acacia wood that was overlaid with gold, and then you had the two gold cherubims with their wings that were touching. Ironically, if you go and watch Indiana Jones and the not the Last Crusade, which is the one with the Ark of the Covenant, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm not saying you should go see that movie. I'm just saying if you did go see that movie, that's actually a very good representation of what the top of the Ark looked like. And so what would happen is that the high priest once a year would have to have a certain attire on and so forth. We won't go into, but he would take blood and he would sprinkle the blood on the cherubim, on the mercy seat. And God said, I will meet with you, the high priest, for the sake of the people, Israel, at the mercy seat. So Paul's using a word that refers back to this idea, the Day of Atonement, that where atonement was made for sin. And he says that we were redeemed, we have redemption through Christ, and God put him forward, put Christ forward, propitiation, which means a payment by sacrifice or like just the right payment, the perfect payment. That God put Christ forward as the perfect payment, the mercy seat, the place where he would forgive us. It's somewhat metaphorical. And that was in his blood. His blood was sprinkled at the mercy seat. So this is for the sake of the Jew also. For the Jew would be able to see, so Christ, the mercy seat was a type and a shadow of Jesus. That he would come and shed his blood on our behalf, and that's where God would meet with us. That we have entrance because of the blood of Christ to see God. Now, if you recall, is at the time when Jesus dies, what happens in Jerusalem? We're told that the curtain in the temple between what would be where like the brazen altar and these things would be, this kind of outer court, not court, but the outer portion of the temple, that there was a huge curtain. And that curtain, when Christ died, was torn supernaturally from top to bottom. It was a massive curtain. It was huge. And it tears open, and all of a sudden the Holy of Holies and the Ark of the Covenant is visible to everyone. So you also have this kind of miraculous symbology that occurs at Jesus' death. That the entrance is wide open through his cross. There's no more curtain now into the presence of God. And so Paul is making these statements that for us are interesting and are excellent, but actually carry a lot richer metaphor and understanding. So God put forward Christ as a propitiation, the right payment, by his own blood, by Christ's blood, to be received by faith. This was to show God's righteousness because in his divine forbearance, he had passed over former sins. Now this is interesting. This was to show his righteousness, that he was right, that he is just, that he's good. Why? He says why. He says that God's righteousness needed to be shown or demonstrated because in his divine forbearance, he had passed over former sins. Now, this is very interesting, and I don't claim to fully understand this by any means, but there's 3 times in the New Testament that it said that God passed over sins. In Acts 17, we read that he says that he, in times of ignorance, he passed over sin. He withheld judgment. In Romans chapter 2, we're told that he wants to lead people to repentance, and so he again withholds judgment. So whether he's talking about macro or large times when this happened, or he's talking about micro instances, there were times perhaps in your life or my life or in times in history where God forbore or waited on judgment, and in this case it says he's making the point that because Christ would come and pay, so he had forbearance on sin. He didn't judge sin in some sort of way because he knew that Christ was coming. Now, I don't claim to understand that all. But because of that, what ends up being the case, or what ends up being the point of this, is that that God is righteous because he judged Christ. Now, if we had all been sin, all of us, I think collectively, if you're familiar with a situation where someone has committed an evil and there's no just retribution, it's upsetting, right? Not many of us are like, I'm so glad that these people that did all these things got nothing. There's something that rises up inside of us, right? We say, no. If you have a judge that excuses someone who has clearly been proven to have done something, you would say that that's an unjust judge, wouldn't you? You would say that guy's not righteous. He is not working the way he ought to work. And so God says, because there were times where he was forbearant to sin, that he judged Christ, and that was a demonstration that he is righteous. In other words, because he judged Christ, we have every right, judicially, we have every right to be declared righteous. Does that make sense? It's extra encouraging because you weren't just flippantly declared righteous. God didn't sweep something under the rug. So when we look at our sin, think of for a moment, how has your sin affected other people? You ever raged on someone? You ever been raged on? How does it make you feel when someone rages on you, insults you, says they hate you, whatever it might be? The destruction that occurs in a heart, right? So our sin has absolutely affected other people, hasn't it? We have wronged others in large ways and in small ways to an extent, right? Different wrongs can have a different effect on a life, but we've done it. And so every other sinner against every other sinner on the planet could ask the question, God, if you forbore on their sins, you're not righteous. How could you do that? I deserve justice. But God says, no, I am righteous because I took that judgment and I judged my son for your sin. He who knew no sin became sin on your behalf. And so now it's awesome because when you stand before the Lord and he says, no, you're right with me, he has every judicial ability to do that. He didn't fudge the numbers. He didn't sweep it under the rug. He didn't, poke, wink, wink, make you a deal. He judged his son. And now all of us, in a sense, like in John 1, have the right to be righteous through faith. Because it was given to us in a judiciary way through the shedding of Christ's blood and his resurrection. It's good stuff to know that we're not just barely righteous. We're not just hoping to be righteous, but that God has done everything we needed to be declared righteous, and it's 100% valid in the court of the universe.